I generally thought this movie was fine when I saw it. The spectacle was like something cool, but like, it's a curiosity.
It was a fine movie. It was like whatever.
My big issue with it is that it's all CGI. This was a harbinger of things to come.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
exciting at the time because it wasn't a thing that was the way yet.
Yeah.
Nice to look at in some ways, but like not
Yeah.
a lot of substance.
It's as pulpy as you can get,
I think at one point I was like, this movie has everything.
except character arcs, emotional connection,
Especially
physics.
emotional connection.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
so
well.
missing on that. We should start the episode.
Welcome to Certain POV's Another Pass podcast with Case and Sam, where we take another look at movies that we find fascinating but flawed. Let's see how we could have fixed them.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Another Pass podcast. I'm your dashing and daring host, Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Femme Fatale, Sam Alizea.
Hey there, Case.
And with us today, we've got Jesse Fresco.
I'm here. Hello.
Yay!
And I can't keep that mid-Atlantic or transatlantic,
Yeah.
announcer voice going for that long. So
Mid-Atlantic.
You need to host a game show now.
the mid-Atlantic is sorry about that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, Jesse, thank you for coming on the show today. We are so excited to do this one. It's one I've had on the list for forever, but like it's kind of a movie that just sort of washes over everyone because it was an interesting piece at the time, but in retrospect, it sort of just feels like a harbinger of today.
Yeah.
Today we are talking about Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow.
Yeah. Who saw this in the theater?
I saw it in theaters.
I did too.
I did not.
It was fun in the theater. I mean, I was blown away when I first saw it. I was like, wow, this is really impressive. Yeah, this is interesting. It's different. It's
Yeah,
cool.
I was too. I was really, really excited about it when it was coming up. Like, this was a movie that had a lot of hype going into it. You know, it's before we get Sin City, so it's a movie that is scratching a lot of the Case Aiken itches there. You know, like this very stylized, old school serial kind of effect going on for everything. The tone, the fact that they use the literal fucking robots from Superman versus the Machines.
Yeah.
You know, like they're doing a lot of things that Case is going to be really excited about. And then the movie came out and I was like, fuck, this was great. Sophomore me in college was saying to everyone. And then I just never watched it again. I might have watched it once. I think I bought the DVD. And so I probably watched it at the time and then never again.
Yeah, same. I
Yeah.
saw it in theaters and it was like 19. I think I rented it one time after it came out on DVD and I just watched all the behind the scenes stuff, watched the movie again, and then never watched it again until like a few days ago. I was like, yeah, it didn't age well, but I didn't hate rewatching it. There's a lot of stuff I like in it.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing, but I will say, like we said, this is a harbinger of things to come at that time frame. This is 1 year before Sin City. I think the first film to do full green screen was actually Attack of the Clones, I want to say.
I can't imagine that they did full green screen, considering the amount of model work and set work that was in.
Oh yeah, they did shoot a little bit on location.
Yeah, they
did.
had.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, because they had all the stuff shot in Venice.
Yeah, they had the
Yeah.
Venice stuff. Yeah, I think it was episode 3 was mostly green screen. Or blue
Yeah,
screen.
I mean, it certainly was. It was getting more.
And that
so.
was a year later.
Right.
That was 2005, 6, because it was 3 years apart for each film.
Right. Yeah, and like the thing is, this one is like it sells things to me based on the fact that they're doing this full CG thing where it's like, yeah, we can do this really like Art Deco kind of style to it all, this like pre-World War II kind of effect that is really impossible to do without feeling kind of fake regardless.
Yeah.
So they could like really go over the top. And there's some good uses of it where they like really incorporate the fact that it's all green screen to do cool things. Unfortunately, most of those are earlier in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, you can do realistic looking Art Deco stuff. Have you ever seen Brazil? Terry Gilliam's Brazil?
Sure, yeah, but like,
I mean, you can do it in live
but
action. It's just it
Brazil
costs a lot
is
more.
still campy. Like, there's still a suspension of disbelief in certain. Like, it's got that Gilliam style to it. Like,
Oh yeah.
you're in for a ride. You know, you're in for a ride. Like that. That's what I kind of mean. Like, it's very difficult to have it all without it being super expensive, especially the level of like set pieces that would be going on in this movie. Like, it was promising that we could do something like that. In retrospect, most of it looks, kind of like Like, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching season 1 of Epic Rap Battles of History when I was watching this. Like,
Oh God.
they're doing all the tricks that I see YouTubers, including myself. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I've done in the past or still do because I'm aware that they are ways of like making things look better, like having like shadowed gradients on the borders of all the
Yeah.
shots. Like,
Lots of light blooming to cover up matte
Mhm.
lines. and stuff
right,
like that.
exactly. There's a lot of effects going on that are like, yeah, you could make this in Premiere with After Effects.
Yeah, yeah. There are times when I think the movie looks pretty good, and there's other times where I'm like, "Ooh, that ain't so good." Yeah, so some of it has aged pretty well, some of it has not. It's just a product of its time. And for 70 million, this is only a $70 million movie. It looks pretty good. That's impressive,
Yeah.
for 70 million. Yeah.
And especially at the time, like, again, we're talking about software now, literally 20 years later.
Yeah. You can do all this at home on your computer on your own.
But that's more just because of the world we are in the world of tomorrow. Like now,
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Like we said, this was a harbinger of things to come in
Right.
both positive and negative ways, because after this film came out, you had so many green screen movies. Like Sin City comes out a year later, then Revenge of the Sith and the 300,
right.
basically Zack Snyder's entire filmography after
Right.
Dawn of the
Yeah,
Dead.
no,
It's
no,
just
totally.
green screen
if you
movies.
had told me that this was like the first Zack Snyder movie, I would have believed you.
Right,
I believe
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
have been like, wow, he uses more color.
I mean, what was it? What was that owl movie he did? Guardians of Gahul.
Yeah.
This looks kind of.
Yeah.
They look kind of the same. It's the same color palette.
But unfortunately now this looks to a modern eye like the kind of schlock that you see on like Netflix. This looks like that space Nazi. What was it? Iron Skies?
Iron Skies.
Yeah, like
Mm.
which is like, a really cheap direct to Netflix like sci-fi movie from at this point
Yeah.
now like 10 years ago. It makes me think of when the zombie craze hit and everyone was making zombie movies and there were
Yep.
so many cheap ass zombie movies.
Oh,
And,
like,
God, they were everywhere. They were
like,
everywhere.
and those are practical sets at least because that's why you make a zombie movie. But like
Right.
the Sci-Fi Channel original movie kind of style, but like that like type of schlock is what this movie feels like. And to its credit, it feels like intentional schlock. Like it is very much the type of thing that I appreciate, which is this like intentionally nostalgic piece that is sort of like dealing with archetypal characters and almost acknowledging the archetypes itself, that it is a performance of an old type of theater and of pageantry. I can appreciate all that. I think there's some execution issues there that keep that from being great. And then the biggest sin of this movie is it's so fucking long.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
almost 2 hours, I believe. This really
Mhm.
should have been 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a little too long. There's a lot of parts where I'm like, okay, could have cut that. Could have cut that. There's a lot of that, like dragging out scenes.
Every scene is too long. Every
Yeah.
fucking scene
Every
is too
scene.
long.
Yeah, the editing is a little not great. I mean, this is apparently Kerry Conran's only directing film, and it's a shame because like you watch it behind the scenes on the DVD, and the producers were like defending him hard, being like, "It's gonna work. It's gonna work. We promise. It's gonna work." And the movie comes out and it tanks. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think did any of these producers work again after this? Because if you put out a bomb like this and you're like really that avid for it, it's like that's a bad black mark on your career.
Yeah.
Like, did these producers work after that? Was it John Abnett? I think was his name. Yeah, did he work after this?
I'm not sure, frankly.
He did, but not very good stuff.
So that kind of makes sense there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, he only made 4 more movies. That
Like the
sucks.
critiques of this movie are really people getting editing and directing mixed up, because I think that this is honestly like I think it's directed well enough. Like they're doing some really innovative stuff, and particularly at the beginning of the movie there's some very innovative stuff.
Yeah.
But every scene just goes forever.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
all just need to be trimmed down. Like this is the same problem that Star Trek the Motion Picture had, where the movie itself is fundamentally fine, but it is broken in very specific ways.
Too long. Yeah. As much as I love seeing that Enterprise, masturbation sequence, it's like you could have cut that down by like 3 minutes, dude.
Yeah.
You
And
really
every
could have
shot,
cut that down.
and that's why like the Blu-ray that came out for Star Trek the Motion Picture is like almost perfect at that point.
Yeah. The way you do it is you do it in Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, where they use the exact same footage and they just chopped it down. It's the same footage from the first movie.
Yep.
Because they didn't want to spend more. But I think the big issue is that as much as I enjoy watching it, just from a visual standpoint, it's pretty good. It felt very video gamey. This has been compared to a video game called Crimson Skies, which I've played. It's a very good game. I wish we could have gotten a third one. It was based on a tabletop game. Essentially, the premise is that the Great Depression and Prohibition hit the country so hard in the 1930s that every state seceded from the Union, so there is no more United States. And so the only way people can get around is through the sky because the interstate highway system was never established. Stupid premise. Makes no sense. It doesn't make any goddamn sense at all. It's like you'd still need passports to go across country lines. Anyways, everyone has an airplane, and so it's like everyone's kind of like a sky pirate or something like that. This feels like that. And there's even a shot when he's going back to base. He's going back to his home base, and it's from behind, like a video game POV. That's literally the Crimson Skies camera perspective when you're flying in the game. When he's going over the ridge line, you see his base. Crimson Skies came out 1 year before this. I have a feeling that people on the visual effects department were fans. It looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for as much as you can be, because of course there is still lag of film production.
Yeah. But the ultimate issue is that you're just not emotionally engaged, as good looking as it is. There's no real emotional investment.
No.
Any of the characters.
None of them.
No.
None of them.
And part of that is a casting choice. I think that Jude Law was a poor choice for the type of Sky Captain they have.
Yeah.
This is one where you could have rewritten the character. Jude Law, being British and not able to do an American accent, apparently, should have just been a British pilot, and you should lean into that. But that means the character has to be a little bit smoother rather than rough and tumble. Like, this is very much going for that kind of, here's our classic, like, Doc Savage type of adventurer type character, which, I'm on record as being always down for. Like, that's a thing I love.
Yeah,
for sure.
But the version of the character with Jude Law in that role, and handsome leading man type, just needs to be smooth. He needs to be a little bit more James Bond. He needs to be not quite the dad so much as the cool uncle type character.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
Or maybe the cool older brother type character. And so that needed to be with that specific thing. I think Gwyneth Paltrow is actually probably the best casting of the main. I was about to say main three, but like that sort of gets into the whole Angelina Jolie is like all over the advertising for this thing, and is it for like 15 minutes.
She's in like 10 minutes max.
15 if we're generous.
Yeah.
But that even makes like their relationship make more sense, because then you could have him be a British soldier in relation to like the British like flying, shield helicarrier that he goes to. Like,
I was about to say it's a shield helicarrier.
Yeah, like that would all make more sense there. Like I said, I think Gwyneth is really well cast. I think Giovanni Ribisi is really well cast. Yeah. I think everything else doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I wasn't crazy about Gwyneth though.
Yeah, who cares about the scientists? Yeah.
I wasn't like crazy about her. I didn't feel like she was like plucky enough. I felt like she was too like chill about everything. Like I was like, is she on something? Like she just felt too chill. Like she didn't feel.
Yeah.
she didn't get her her IV of vitamins that day when she was reading lines.
So do you not like the character, or you just not like her?
No. I really honestly just didn't. I just didn't think that she was plucky enough. There were just some readings that just felt very flat to me. And it did not help that her and Jude Law did not have any chemistry.
No.
Yeah,
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Which was really painful. The fact that like they couldn't make any banter work.
Right.
At all.
This is the big problem with shooting things entirely on green screen. You don't know what the hell you're looking at.
Yeah, that's true.
There's many interviews on the Attack of the Clones DVD where Ewan McGregor is like, this is a nightmare. Trying to work like this is impossible. It's like, I don't know what I'm looking at most of the time. And I think it finally all came to a head and people kind of stopped doing it. And I think the volumetric screen took over. Was with the Hobbit movies, where Ian McKellen has a visible breakdown on screen. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He's like, oh God damn it. It's like he's like, he can't work like this, like, because they couldn't do the forced perspective trick from Lord of the Rings because they were shooting in 3D. So you have two cameras, so you can't do forced perspective. It's all from separate angles, so they couldn't do it. So everything had to be composited together in post. And so you just see him like in a big green void, and he just has a mental breakdown. He just can't do it anymore. That's the problem, is people just can't work properly like that. Like, actors need people to react to. Acting is mostly about reacting. If there's nothing to react to, then what's the point?
There was no reacting. Like, and that was the thing. Like, and maybe that's why, like, some of her reading to me was very strange, because I was like, who is she? What is she talking to? Like, even like I thought the scene, first of all, the scene with the Wizard of Oz movie in the background was awesome. Like, that was really good and whatever. But all of her scenes with him, some of her with the editor, just things just felt so disconnected for almost all the performers in the movie. I would say like
Yeah.
Giovanni Ribisi and probably the 10, maybe 15 minutes of Angelina Jolie were
Yeah.
probably the most engaged. But I was like, it just feels
Angelina
so
Jolie still doing her Tomb Raider accent.
right. Like
Yep.
she's just owning that, and like we're like we love that on her. So let's, you know, but I just kind of felt like these are your two main characters, and they just both felt disconnected. Like
Yeah.
that made it really hard for us to care about them throughout the film.
This movie really, really, really wants to be the Rocketeer. Like
Yeah.
really wants to be the
Yeah.
Rocketeer. Like there's so many homages to so many other movies in this film. Like there's some Rocketeer references. There's obviously the Empire Strikes Back reference where her camera falls in the grate and she's about to
Yeah.
get stepped on. It's like, oh, I get it. It's like I get it. Or when they do the sideways through the alleyway, and it's like when the two TIE fighters collide in the asteroid. There's a lot of Star Wars in here, but those are just moments. But when you actually get down on the ground and you have people like talking to each other, it feels like it's disconnected.
Yeah. I think actually the really good comparison is Indiana Jones. I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
that's
Yeah, it's
doing
Indiana
this-
Jones as
it's
well, yeah.
doing that type of story. And I had a mental exercise throughout this movie. Once the Jude Lawness of the movie like really clicked in for me as being part of the problem for like how he's written as how Sky Captain is written. I was like, well, just imagine Harrison Ford giving every single line in this movie.
Yeah,
And it's
young
actually
Harrison Ford.
way
Yeah.
better. Like if you're picturing
Yeah,
young
yeah.
Harrison Ford
Yeah,
do
that's your
any
quick
scene.
fix. Yeah.
Like, it's like,
Mhm.
oh my God. And that just it illustrates for me just how much the casting choices were wrong for it. Regardless of like the actual quality of the delivery, it's just they weren't the right people giving them.
Yeah. Were they the only ones available? Was there anybody else on the docket to be cast in this? I really don't know. I mean,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know if this was his choices.
Listen, they both look amazing.
I mean, it is a relatively low budget movie, and I don't see any notes about the casting. I'm sure like once they got them like on the hook, it was like, oh yeah, we got Jude Law. Fuck yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
listen,
yeah.
they both look amazing, right? Like every shot and the way that the lighting hits like her hair and all of that stuff, like it's so fun pulp, right? Like it like looks great. They do a lot of that like 1930s like over the eye lighting that I love. And so Jude Law's eyes always like really pop, right? And so like they look incredible. The film looks cool, right? And you're like this should be awesome, but you don't care about them, and it's a huge problem. I think I cared more about the supporting cast, even like one of the like the scientists from the beginning. Like I was like, where is he? Where is he gone? I cared more about him than I did about our main characters, and we're supposed to think of them as charming and funny, and I honestly did not buy that they had a previous relationship. Like they told me they had a previous relationship which was troubling, and all that back and forth, that Indiana Jones magic that just never really came through.
Yeah. It's really weird because there's that moment when they're in Shangri-La. They're in bed naked, and she's just and she's looking over at him like, turn around. Like, dude, if you had a relationship, you've seen her naked. It's like, so
Right.
what? Like, why is she so weirded out by this? Like,
I
she
feel like it
wouldn't
should
be.
be more like,
Well, but that felt
again?
like a thing from
What?
the 40s.
That's true, but
You
like I
know?
feel like she should have been like more like, what are you doing here? Why? What did we do? Like I think it would have been, but then you wouldn't get the turnaround part, and then have their lovely friend be there too.
Oh yeah, I love that. That was great.
Yeah.
That's where the
So-
movie is working. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that shows the problem here, which is that scene being awkward is because it's too long. We need to get
Yeah.
to that punchline faster because that punchline is really good.
Right.
Too much bickering and bantering. They could have trimmed it up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like that's mostly what editing for television is. Like cut a few seconds here. It's like, but if you cut enough of it, it trims it up, and you can get it to where it needs to be.
Yeah, and that's what I keep coming back to, that this movie is way too long. Now, the other thing that I want to bring up, and I've mentioned this in passing a couple of times now, which is that there is interesting stuff that they're doing in the edit that is impossible for a live set piece kind of thing.
Yeah.
The big shot for me that really hit it was when we see Gwyneth typing at her typewriter and the windows are being filled up with her headlines, like what she's working
Oh,
on.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
shots
yeah.
like that I think are really cool, and I think that we just lose them completely towards the end of the movie. So I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
artistry in what is fundamentally the updated version of the short that got this made. The World of Tomorrow
Yeah.
short that Carrie Conran did,
I was
that
about
like
to say, like, a lot of that stuff is from the shorts,
yeah,
and that's
and
what
like it's
made
it's
it in.
updated, and like they're doing, you know, with a bigger budget, and that's all amazing stuff. It shows that the rest of the movie doesn't have that level of like thought out kind of process to it. It's not another pass at a pre-existing short film that he had done.
Yeah. Because he had been working on that like on his own while he was still doing his main job. So he'd come home at night and just work on it on his computer. So he was like designing all the models in his own computer and like putting them in. And it's like he would shoot small things with friends of his to fill in the roles. It's like, wasn't the short film only like 6 or 7 minutes?
Right?
Like
Yeah,
that?
I mean, it was a short film. Like it was under 20 versus
Yeah, it's like
way too long here.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think what's interesting is that like the truth is that even though you watch this film and it is too long and there are parts that could be really edited down and our main characters have a problem, you can tell that the person who created it or the people that were creating it really like loved this idea, right? They loved this genre. So like there is
Yeah.
something still really lovely in the film, despite its incredible flaws,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah. There's a
mostly
vision.
character
There's a
arcs.
vision here. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a vision.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, and there's a love of like this pulp stuff, just like what you said earlier, like these references that you can kind of harken back to the things that you would love about a 1930s, 1940s serial, right? And but like adding all like the dirigibles and the giant robots and just all of that. So cool. The twists and turns. It reminds me of like a radio serial, right? Like, and then she was a robot. Oh, he
I
was
mean, there
down
was a
along.
I mean, when Sky Captain is flying back to his base, there's that radio announcer, and it sounds like he's reading off one of the serials,
Yeah.
over the radio.
Yeah.
So, not quite sure why an aircraft is getting normal radio frequency. That doesn't work like that. Even to the point where they reference Buck Rogers. They have Buck Rogers comic books
Yeah.
show up in the movie. It's like, okay, I get it. Isn't the gun he gets also, isn't that Buck Rogers gun?
Yeah,
Isn't
I
that the
think
one?
so.
Yeah. It's interesting that they put all these things in here, and there's clearly vision. It's just, I think that maybe Kerry Conran got a bit in over his head. He was trying, really trying. I wish he could have made more movies, but he's only ever made this one film.
Yeah.
That sucks.
And that's so wild when you actually look at the finished project, which is, again, not bad. And when it came out,
it's not bad. No, it's good.
When it came out, we were all hyped up because like the hype about making this movie, like Conran's like enthusiasm for the project that he was creating was infectious. Like the marketing for it was like, look, this is really fucking cool that we're able to make a movie like this. Because like think about like the contemporaries, like for full CG movies, like that was hot, that was exciting, and we were getting things like Toy Story, we were getting things like The Incredibles, and then we were getting things like Polar Express. And like it was very clear that to do the kind of crazy, aesthetically pleasing CG 3D environments that we were putting out there, we had to have like stylized main characters, and this was presenting an option of like, well, what if you like Who Framed Roger Rabbit it and like integrate them completely? And like that was really exciting, and being like, and look, we can create, on a shoestring budget, relatively speaking, a fully fleshed out world with giant robots and all these kind of things that normally would be associated with like ballooning budgets and all that. It's just not put together in a way that will keep you excited and back on it. But it is, like we keep saying, the forebear of like what we were going to get for all movies ultimately. And like it's hard to be mad at this one because it is infectiously optimistic about it all. It is like a futurist in that regard. And then you look at the dystopia that we're currently in. I mean, this movie has Laurence Olivier dead, being recreated through the magic of technology to be the main villain in this thing. This is literally the thing we're concerned about all the time now. We just had a strike about this.
Yeah, this is something that I wanted to complain about, which is like a huge negative I have, is putting Laurence Olivier in the film. Like, I love Laurence Olivier as an actor. He's fantastic. But I do think that there's no reason to have him in here at all. Like you could say, oh, we got permission from his estate. Like don't, it's like digging someone up from their grave and like puppeteering them on screen. It's like, it's so creepy to me.
But you've had time to think about that and really come to that conclusion. Like prior to this, there's Forrest Gump. Like, the amount of
Well,
movies,
that's different because they used like archive footage,
right, and
they
it's
just kind of like
presidents,
moved the mouse.
which is like a
Yeah,
difference.
but this is like they literally resurrected him and
Right.
put him CGI on screen.
Right,
Right.
but you've had time to like actually process and like come to an opinion about that type of necromancy. Like
Yeah.
like this is a movie that is again a futurist, and everything they're trying to do is trying to push the envelope in this shoestring budget. And so
Yeah.
like it's like, hey, this is exciting, and we have like one of these like great actors of our lifetime brought back, and a perfect fit from the standpoint of like a film career that plays to this kind of genre.
Yeah. I mean, off air, we were just talking about The Flash and how they put in multiple dead people in that movie. Like, George Reeves is in there, Chris Reeves is in there, Adam West. Putting in dead people in your movie, it's a bit in bad taste now. I mean, I think the worst offender is probably Rogue One with Peter Cushing.
Mhm.
It's because they just recreated the character and just had someone else stand in and then put words in his mouth. And you just said, oh, we're just going to use his face. And then now we're having strikes over all of this stuff that's happening with AI. And they're just recently, probably the most heinous display of it was all this AI porn that's happening right now. The Taylor Swift stuff
Right.
that just happened, which
Yeah.
is despicable and gross and creepy. Why the hell would you do that? That's disgusting. But yeah, that's where we're at. Like we said, this movie was a harbinger of things to come.
Right.
Like putting people's faces on another person's body. It's weird and it's creepy to me, and I don't like it. So, because you could have gotten any other actor at the time. Here's what I would say. Make Jude Law the main villain. Just use his face. That would make more sense to me. Then you can have a British guy in your mean villain role and have, like, I don't know, some traditional American actor in the lead role. Like, who was the guy that played Rocketeer? Was it Billy Campbell? Get him back. There you go. You got your sky
It
captain.
would have been perfect.
There you go. have
mean,
the
honestly-
jetpack show up at his base, just like in the background.
Yeah,
Somebody else
have like a
flying
little
around.
nod there.
There you go.
Wink, wink.
Also, by the way, am I the only one that noticed that when his whole base gets blown up, he doesn't give a shit about anybody else that worked for him except for Dex?
Just Dex.
But-
He's the only one
bro!
who matters. He's the only one who has a name. So
There's a bunch of other planes. Are they all his? Like, does he just like swap them out? Like, I'm gonna take this one today.
I don't know.
It's got the red bullseye on it.
I mean, he's
Are there other people that work for him?
does look like he has a support crew, but it also is supposed to be kind of like similar to like an Iron Man or a Batman, but like the gadget era kind of Batman.
Eh.
I don't know.
I mean,
it would make sense for him to have multiple jets, but it also would make sense for him to have a squad. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it's weird because earlier in the film, they do say that the people, the governments of the world are turning to Sky Captain
his mercenary forces.
and
Right.
his mercenary squad forces, right? So that makes you believe that he is the captain of an actual
Yeah.
army that flies, right? He's a mercenary, basically.
Yeah, so it's assumed that he has people, right?
Right, yes, it's stated he has people. And you do see people when Gwyneth Paltrow first shows up, when Polly shows up. You see people around the base, like fixing things, walking around in the background. But like he doesn't care about
Yeah,
any
it's
of
weird.
those people.
It's creepy.
Also, I just realized that Sky Captain is thus kind of like a heroic version of like Eric Prince.
Oh, god damn it.
Oh my gosh.
You know what? Fuck you. Okay, just for that, fuck
I
you.
know, like it's gross to say that part, but like it is
If
kind
you
of
don't know who Eric Prince is, look up the history of Blackwater. It's just
yeah. But that is not the type of character we're trying to be presented here. Like even though it is the same role.
Yeah, they want like they're trying to make him a Buck Rogers or a Flash Gordon or a Dan Dare. They're kind of trying to make that.
Yeah, it's kind of the vibe of like a World War I vet, like an ace
Yeah.
pilot kind of character who's like, no, well, I still have a plane and like I've found a secret base while in the middle of the war, and now I can use it to like fight the good fight, regardless of borders or something to that effect.
Yeah, what was that pulp character? What was it? Johnny Red. You ever heard of Johnny Red?
No, but like I mean,
No.
It was Garth Ennis has written a couple of comics around him. It was a pulp World War II character. Basically, the idea is that he was an American pilot that was sent overseas to fight with the RAF. And so he gets his own squadron. And so he's kind of like a sky captain. He's in charge of these people, but he typically just goes out on his own and does his own thing. So He has no backup or support. He's like, I'll just take on all the Nazis by myself. It's fine. And somehow he keeps surviving. He just keeps surviving every single time. So he's just got really good luck. It's an interesting character. And there's a bunch of books by a writer I really like named Derek Robinson. He wrote a book called Piece of Cake, which I really love. It's one of my favorite books about RAF pilots in World War II. It's set during the Phony War. And it's like 750 pages long, but it's a breezy read. It's basically the realistic version of what it was like. And that there was a lot of sitting around, waiting for shit to happen, people just being pissed off at each other because they're so bored. Yeah, it's really interesting characters. And there's some characters just kind of go off and just do shit on their own. Because it's just like, yeah, we're bored as fuck. Let's just go find some supply lines, just blow them up. So that's kind of, I think, what they're trying to do with this character, is they're trying to create like this happy-go-lucky, go out there and just fight the bad guys and live to fight another day kind of thing. But the movie throws you into the plot like right away. There's like no like lead up to like anything. It just like the movie just like dead starts. Like, oh, we're already dealing with this scientist thing.
Yeah.
There's been no establishment of character, no establishment of the world. Like, if you're just like coming into this from a normal audience perspective, you're going to be completely confused. When I went and saw this with a friend of mine in theater, I enjoyed it because I like that kind of stuff. He walked out and he's like, that was weird. It was just, there's no entry point for the average audience member.
Yeah, I mean, like, they do the radio stuff as a way of as kind of covering it. I think the problem is that the movie is so slow, but also doesn't have a lot of lead-in exposition. It's weird that it jumps almost in media res, yet is also at the same time, again, 2 fucking hours long and doesn't need to be that long.
Yeah, could have been 90 minutes.
That's actually a really good observation, because I do feel like at some point it felt like really slow, but then there were moments where I felt like, wow, it doesn't stop, right? Like the set pieces are so long that it just feels like non-stop, just running explosions, things like that. But they're so long, and then you don't get enough character stuff, that it feels like the movie is at both times never stopping, but like also just dragging, which is kind of crazy to think
It kind of sounds
about.
like you're describing a Transformers movie to me. Never stopping, but always dragging.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah. The sequence that always goes on too long to me is when they go back to the city for the second time and the ornithopters from Dune show up. That's literally what the ornithopters from Dune are described as, birds. They just flap their wings. I like the new design in the movies. They look like dragonflies, but what they are supposed to look like is supposed to be birds. So the ornithopters from Dune show up, and that sequence goes on for like fucking 15 minutes, dude.
Way too long.
It's
so
oh my
long.
God. It's too long. Jesus, too long. I see what you're saying. They want to have their cake and eat it too. Like, we have big sequences, but the movie is just like, there's not enough in it to justify those sequences being that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's because we just don't get enough of like what's really happening. You know, and like you do, but you don't. Like everything's kind of short, just interactions or radio overlay. And then it's just like, and now there's a monster of a mechanical nature that they will fly away from or fight. And oh, his airplane is also a submarine. Cool. Like it's just like there's so much spectacle, but not enough to like propel the plot forward.
Also, like, when Sky Captain gets back, I keep calling him Sky Captain. I know his name is Joe. I just want to call him Sky Captain.
I like Sky Captain.
When he gets back to base and he's just sitting in his office, and I'm like, you're not going to, like, go back and talk to the authorities and investigate what's going on? Because apparently everybody knows who you are, so you probably have some level of authority here. You're not going to, like, investigate why they were trying to get the generators under the city? You're just going to fly back home. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we need the movie to happen. We need to come back and fight the ornithopters of Dune. So it's all good.
Does anyone else have like major notes that they need to state before we take a break and come back for pitches? Even though I think I have a feeling what all those pitches are going to be.
It's all going to be the same pitch.
The plan that Totenkopf has makes no goddamn sense.
Oh yeah, why is it an end of the world situation? Like, sure, fucking like make your like Noah's Ark rocket, whatever kind of idea, but like that doesn't need to do anything else. Like, just fuck off somewhere. Like, that's fine. Like,
yeah. Okay. So he's going to lead animals 2 by 2 onto an ark, and he's going to drop them as soon as the planet gets destroyed. Okay. Well, number one, they're not going to have any food. So the planet's going to be destroyed. So you're not going to have any food or water or any place for them to survive. Other issue is 2 of every species isn't enough to repopulate. You're really smart, but you ain't that smart.
Yeah.
I also find it hard to believe that a scientist would lean so heavily into religion. I don't buy that. And the last one, different animals have different lifespans. So the lifespan of a housefly is a little different from the lifespan of an elephant. So this doesn't work.
Yeah,
How are
he's
all these
also-
animals being kept alive? If he's dead and these machines have been doing this for years and years, how are all these animals still alive?
Agreed.
Yeah, it needed to be way more
Also, they're
elaborate.
dropping them for such a high space. Like, I was just like, I know they have little pods and stuff, but like, some of them are gonna die on the way down. So, like, it's just not a good plan. It is a horrible, horrible plan, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And how do the vials tie into the plan exactly?
Oh yeah, was that ever explained?
I don't think they ever explained how the vials that they had to get from her, like there was never a sequence showing how they like powered the rocket ship or unlocked some secret code so that the robot could complete the thing that her master programmed her to do. There was nothing to really tell us. So like that whole journey to Shangri-La and to the mine and all of that makes no sense. Also, the robot can just hire people from the other guy's team. Like, there's no human. Like, this robot is great. And I'm so sorry that they died the way that they did because they didn't deserve to, because they can hire other people to ambush other people for vials. It just doesn't make sense.
Are they trying to imply that the vials are filled with the DNA of Adam and Eve? Is that what they're trying to imply?
Oh, maybe.
I thought it was some sort of like DNA harvesting kind of thing, which then when they actually have the full on animals, it's like, oh, well, that's different than what I thought.
Yeah. What did the
Right.
mini elephant mean when they found that thing? What was that all about?
Well, it was one of his experiments, right? So, like, it was just showing that he was, like, experimenting on animals? I don't know.
It wasn't Totenkopf though. That was Jennings's experiment. Why would he do that?
Didn't they work with them also?
I mean, I thought that was just a nod to, what was it, a Tex Avery cartoon with the tiny elephant?
Oh.
I don't
Like
know.
there's what I think is Warner Brothers cartoon of a tiny elephant like wandering around a city and everyone being like freaked out by it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I know what
Yeah,
you're talking
I
about.
thought
Ah.
that that was a nod to it, where it's like, here's science doing the thing, because it's all like, if you were obsessed with like late night TNT in like 1993, then this all would make sense to you, like all the references they make in this entire thing.
Yeah. There's also references to was it the island of Dr. Moreau. A lot
Yeah.
of that is in there. Like, what the island they go to is literally just the island of Dr. Moreau. That's all it is. It's
With robots.
like I said, like it's pulp.
Yeah.
It's just pulp. Like, so we're bringing up all these questions of like, well, how are they supposed to get the animals off the ark, and how are they supposed to repopulate? It's pulp.
Yeah.
None of it matters. Which is also the problem. Is that this is the problem with pulp, is that it's good for the immediate enjoyment, but then afterwards it evaporates from your brain.
Right. And the fact that the movie is too slow keeps it from having that sort of like gut punch impact that like an Indiana Jones had, where like that is
It doesn't quite
right,
penetrate.
like that is
yeah.
pulp, but
Mhm.
it's pulp in a way that it's so exciting that you can't help but like have it like linger with you. This movie does not. Like, I have to keep rereading what happens in the end of the movie, because like by that point in the movie I'm just like, all right, there's another sequence and there's just more of this shit. All right, cool. Like, and it's fine. It was enjoyable enough to watch, but it wasn't a thing that was like lingering with me. There's so much of this movie I didn't remember from when I watched it in theaters. It just doesn't stick with you beyond the experiment that it is. Anyway, I have a pretty good idea what we're going to say when we get to pitches, but I think we're there. So why don't we take a break, shout out one of the awesome shows on our network, maybe insert a ad for anything from Jaguar Sharks if you've got one, but we'll take the break here, and then when we come back we'll have some pitches, and I have a feeling how that's going to go, and then we'll see where we're at.
Hey,
Oh, hey, Jeff.
what's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
And we're back. So, Jesse, we have
Yes.
one rule on this show when it comes to the actual pitch order, although I feel like we could kind of combine a lot of things that we just said in a previous segment of the show, but it's that I'm not allowed to go before Sam. Sam has to go before me, so she can either go first or you can go first. I just can't go before Sam. And you are our guest, and if you want to take a swing, you're welcome to go first, or you're welcome to put Sam out there first, or we can say that we can kind of all just work together on what I think we're all pretty clear about how we would make it go.
I would just pitch this one thing to start, and then we can all just do a round robin thing.
Sure.
I would like an opening sequence that shows Sky Captain fighting in some kind of major conflict. I mean, this is set previous to World War II.
It feels like it, yeah.
Maybe have him a World War I combat veteran, something like that. Have him in the middle of a fight in World War I, towards the tail end of the war when the U.S. started getting involved. That way you can show off his skill set as a pilot, because he really isn't introduced until 15, 20 minutes in the movie, and it's called Sky Captain. It's like, okay, that just seems weird. So yeah, I think it'd behoove the movie to have an intro sequence to set the tone. I just rewatched the film Fury, the David Ayer film Fury, the tank movie. I really like that film. I think it's the last time David Ayer actually made a good movie. Because after that he did, Sabotage and Suicide Squad. Hasn't really been hitting any home runs recently. And I haven't seen The Beekeeper because I don't care. The opening sequence of that film is that it's just a guy wandering through a battlefield in World War II on a horseback, and then Brad Pitt jumps out of a tank, stabs him, and then takes the horse, and then he gets into the tank, and they drive away. It's like just the one lone group that survived that battle. I think that having that be the one lucky pilot that survives a massive sortie, setting the tone for what's happening later on in the film.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see that, or I could see it as like a in media res, like a fully in media res, like Sky Captain adventure, and then we get the info dump that comes after, but have it be like him solving a different crime or something like that.
A MacGyver kind of thing.
Yeah, like in Indiana Jones, like open with him on previous mission, and then the next mission starts.
Yeah.
And then that way you can have like the radio announcers like talking about who Sky Captain is before we get into the main plot, so that we're at least like aware of who the players are.
I mean, I could even see it be as like a juxtaposition thing. Like you could do it in newspaper kind of serials. Like if you don't want to do a whole sequence.
Oh, we can do the spinning newspaper kind of.
Right. And you can you could have her in the office, right? We can still have kind of like that moment in the office, and you can have like the spinning like Sky Captain saves the world again.
Veteran of the Great War continues fighting for us.
There you go. Didn't the movie Overlord do that to introduce the film? Remember that the Wolfenstein movie that's not Wolfenstein?
I didn't see it.
It's basically just Wolfenstein. Okay. They could have just called it Wolfenstein and had Wyatt Russell's character be named BJ Blazkowicz, and it's like, yeah, it's a Wolfenstein movie. There's zombies. It's great. It's Wolfenstein. Fine.
See, you could have done that and kind of had her put down the paper and maybe like roll her eyes, which would actually like give us probably a little more character like insight to their relationship than their actual banter. And then you could have still cut to the scientist getting off so it would be like very short, but at least it would introduce him, because we don't really get to see him till much later. And I don't have a problem following Polly. Like I have no problem with her like being the person that introduces us to the world, but I wish that there was like a more clean introduction to Sky Captain at the beginning.
Yeah. Or she's watching one of those newsreels in the theater, waiting for the scientist to show up, and then she just sees it. She's like, "Ugh, God!" It's like my ex is on screen. Ugh.
Yeah, it would be great,
and that would be a great transition because you could have that whole sequence of him saving the day, and then it turns into the pre-roll like newsreel kind of thing, and that would actually be a really fun way to do it. Oh man, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That would truncate so much crap. It's like that cuts out a good like 5 minutes in the movie that we don't need.
Exactly.
Yeah. We don't need Dumbledore to show up early on in the film. What's that actor's name? Was it Albert Finney, I think is his name?
Well, it's Michael Gambon.
Oh, Michael Gambon. Yeah, Dumbledore after the original Dumbledore passed away.
Dumbledore 2.
Dumbledore 2, yeah. Oh, he passed away? Oh, wow. I didn't know Michael Gambon.
Oh, yeah, recently.
Oh, yeah, September 27th, 2023. Oh, wow, I didn't know he passed away. Oh, that's a shame. Damn. I didn't know. Well, now both Dumbledores are dead. Also, didn't Jude Law go on to play Dumbledore in those goddamn movies?
Yeah.
Son of a bitch! God damn it. Oh, Christ. We did the first one of those on Film Rescue. We basically just said, okay, so the movie erases itself in the last 5 minutes. Why are we here? It literally erased it because they use magic to wipe away everybody's memory. The whole thing never happened. Why are we here?
Yeah.
That movie
Well,
sucks.
but why are we here now talking about Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow?
Yes, we'll get back on topic.
Focus.
Yeah, so I think that like we kind of covered the big note, which is that it's too long. It needs to be about 25 minutes shorter, roughly.
Yeah.
So I would be fine with just shaving off almost every single scene because they all just run too long. And I think we covered an opening of the movie.
Or combined scenes.
Yeah.
Like the robot attack and the ornithopter attack. Why are they not happening at the same time?
Most of the sequences in this movie are just like, and then this, which means you could actually probably cut any one of these and it would just like shorten it, but that actually doesn't shorten it the way I want it to. I want the scenes themselves to be shorter because they all run too long. And then we can have like our nonstop, here's this huge train of action that you're going on from cart to cart. Just speed that shit up, like getting between each one of them, because that's what is wrong with this movie, that it drags, so that like by the end of the movie you're like, finally we're fucking done with this thing, even though it is a cool premise that like you're coming into excited about.
Yeah.
I also do think like we're trying to take things away, but I would like to add, just because definitely bothered us as a collective, I would like to add a small moment of grief for the people who died at the base.
Yeah.
Yes.
It happened inside of the plane, but I think it should be acknowledged that Sky Captain is pissed, and then like he's got to go get Dex, and the reason why he has to get Dex is Dex survived, and he might be the only member of his team, right? So like you kind of like, not that you want to like leave a friend out there, but it explains like why even so like we are going to do everything we can to go get Dex. He's the only one left, right?
Yeah.
Also, like, can we just bring Angelina Jolie's character in sooner? Just for a little bit? Like, I don't know. She just has a cool fleet. And I just feel like that was one of the things that was shorter.
Yeah, it's a wild coincidence. He just happens to be there in that area where they're going to run out of fuel. It's just
Right.
crazy coincidence.
Right. I feel like there should be like more of a like, we're going to rendezvous, or I'm going to work with this person because she's the best at retrievals. Like, give her like another.
I thought that
like
the
a
rendezvous
little-
there was a rendezvous part of that. I didn't think it was,
Was it?
I didn't think it was a complete coincidence. I thought because he figured out where.
Oh yeah,
he was gonna go.
that's right. He sends a message to her to get
Yeah.
her to show up.
And then he just happens to run out just in time.
Yeah, you didn't call her earlier. It's like
Yeah, I think it would actually be cooler for him to like have at least sent messages a couple times. I just feel like it would be cooler to have her there, especially if you're going to use her for all of your advertisements. Just putting that out there. 'Cause she was advertised
Yeah.
as a main cast person.
She was hot at the time.
Yeah,
you know?
and I feel like this is like the same thing like with Beowulf, where people are like, come see Angelina Jolie, and then she's barely in the film.
Barely in the
And
film.
right, and so I feel like people they did that a lot with her. It's fine, just bring her in sooner. I think it actually doesn't even hurt your coupling. Although I'm kind of like on the fence whether or not there should have been anything romantic at all.
I think from the type of story they're doing, it has to be because like it's just the archetypes that
Right.
they're doing.
Yeah.
It's just innocent enough to make it silly. He did cheat on her for 3 months, yes, but at the same time, it's like they don't really get intimate on screen at any point.
I mean,
So it's
she
like,
almost did possibly cut the line to his engine, so she might have almost murdered him.
I mean, like between Jude Law and Angelina Jolie. I mean, like the two of them. There's
yeah.
no, they don't like flirt with each other or anything like that on screen. It's like it's just innocent enough to
Right,
let that
right.
slide. Yeah. Whereas with Jude Law and with Paltrow, it's like that archetype of the gruff American hero and the kind of annoying woman sidekick. Like that's an archetype. Like go back to like, Indiana Jones, Romancing of the Stones. Like it's very standard. Even like Tarzan and Jane of Edgar Rice Burroughs' stories. Like that's very common. So I get why it's there. It's just not execute it properly because we said the chemistry is wrong. So another thing we have to do is fix the casting.
Yeah, and normally we try to avoid things that are impossible casting changes. And in this scenario, Jude Law is a producer on this one. Like, very clearly this movie got made because he's part of it. So I don't think we can lose Jude Law, but I do think that we can rewrite the part so that it plays to his strengths better than the movie we got. Like we said in the first half, like, if the character is supposed to be British, and that's why he has association with the British version of S.H.I.E.L.D., apparently, have him be a little bit more suave, have him be a little less rough and tumble, just like play to Jude Law and like not pretend that he's American when he can't do an American accent.
Yeah.
What if he served underneath Angelina Jolie at one point?
Yeah.
Like that, he was RAF serving underneath her during some war, and then he went off on his own as a mercenary. He decides to call it a favor or something. That makes more sense than her just showing up.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, have them be,
especially for like a possible past dalliance.
Yeah, that's a cool way of like having the characters have like some connections outside of, you know, just being like, oh yeah, it's a friend.
Yeah,
he's a hot man. Of course, I'm his friend.
I have this ace in my back pocket. I'm gonna play it now. Yeah, it makes more sense to have them there. It connects them more than just oh yeah, it's a friend of a friend.
Yeah, like even if he's no longer working underneath Jolie, like even if he now is like his own private military, at least like it kind of plays into a structure and gives us some more background on the character. Like we know so little about Sky Captain. It would be nice to have him have that military career be fleshed out when this is the era of like, yeah, those daring pilots of World War I are still the stuff of legend, you know, like the Red Baron, you know, like there's just names that we know because like, hey, this was a paradigm shift in how war was done when all of a sudden we had pilots, but they weren't that powerful. But there's this like swashbuckling quality to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To become an ace pilot in World War I believe he only had to get like 5 kills because it was so hard to get a kill. It was so difficult. Then there was one pilot I think got like 25 kills. It's interesting seeing like kind of like there used to be a time when it's like being a pilot was like a cool thing. Now it's like it's a job.
Right.
It's not as cool anymore.
Well, and this is an era where it's less like fleets and more like individual aces, you know, like versus you get to World War II and it's much more like, here's our aircraft carrier and here we're launching like this number of vessels and like the bombers are the big important ones and, you know, all of that. Like, not to say that there weren't still like hotshot pilots, and there's still hotshot pilots to this day, but it isn't catching the imagination the way it was during World War I. And this is supposed to feel kind of like the continuation of that story.
So yeah, like adding in that opening where it's him in World War I would bring that back. It would make it feel like like it kind of reminds me of the tagline for the original Superman: "You'll believe a man can fly." It's like yeah, that's what you should feel.
You won't believe how well this man can fly.
Yes, there you go.
You can even put Angelina in high-fiving him, which gives her 2 more minutes in the movie.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
For your advertisement time.
Can I just make an executive decision here?
Uh-huh.
Can we not make the airplanes into submarines?
I mean, that's like the grand tradition of like weird gadget device kind of ones.
But it's like a get out of jail free card. It basically means that there's no danger for anybody.
I don't hate it, but also we're looking to cut things down. I'm also fine with cutting those sequences. So like, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Fuck it. Yeah.
It's called Sky Captain. I'd like him to stay in the sky, please.
Fair.
It's not called Sea Captain. It's Sky Captain. They have it be like an airship that he has to take on or something like that. Or there's a shield bubble around the island.
That's true, because otherwise it would just be the captain.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
he ain't Captain Nemo. He's Sky Captain. I would prefer it if he stayed in the sky.
Yeah, have a submersible sequence. So if you want to like show off like how water looks in the in this like CGI kind of environment. But yeah, keep the main like combat all in the sky with Jude Law's character. So I feel like we've kind of crossed a lot of the things that we wanted. Like we kind of covered it all, because the movie is such an interesting piece of history, and it was fine when it came out. It didn't do that well, and it didn't do that well because no one was like that excited about it afterwards. But it was a proof of concept of like what you can do. And unfortunately, that proof of concept is now our dystopian nightmare that we're living under right now.
God. Any Marvel movie at this point. Thanks a lot, man. Jesus.
But the movie was made in good faith, I believe. And like,
it was made with good intentions. Yes.
Yeah. There was a lot of enthusiasm about like recapturing a world that is gone and having that sort of, what is it called? Z-Rust or whatever, like where it's like, or like retro futurist kind of elements.
Yeah.
You know, advanced science, but from a perspective of like 1940 stuff, because like those pulp serials were so cool and like sold a bill of goods that didn't really happen. Like, we are in the future. We have amazing stuff. My phone is more powerful than the computer I took to college by like a considerable amount.
Yeah, you can do literally anything on your phone now. Your phone has all the technology you would ever need in your life.
Yeah, this is just an aside because, why not? Right before I went on paternity leave, I tried to see if I could go a week using just my phone and not having a laptop. So I still had like my like USB-C like hub set up at my office, which like plugged into a keyboard and a mouse and a monitor. And I used Dex mode on my Galaxy Fold 4. And the Dex mode was like perfect for just about everything, except for a few issues with like having to like dig up some files that were like I just needed that were only locally stored, because I had Dropbox, I had Excel, I had Word, I had Google Docs, I had all of that. I was just using a perfectly fine setup for everything. Like, I could Google Map all the locations that I had to like route people to. All the software, because it was all web-based, was available to me, and it was fine on my goddamn phone. And I had I probably had like 50 tabs open at one point, and it was working fine. Like, phones are insane now.
Yeah, if you have 50 tabs open on your laptop, it typically slows the goddamn thing down. It's like, whereas with your phone, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we've reached that point where nothing is exciting anymore.
I mean, like, we are in the future. We are in the world of tomorrow today. The problem is that world of tomorrow...
I just want my rent lower, dude.
Exactly. That world of tomorrow is still a world where we're looking back to the yesterday and thinking like, God, that was like kind of nice, wasn't it? And that kind of sucks. But looking at this movie and looking at it as a curiosity, looking at it as a piece of like, hey, this is what is possible in movie making. I'm still happy that it came out. I was excited for it when it came out. The gist of it is definitely the kind of thing I would enjoy, even though I think if it was just fucking shorter and like just grabbed you by the balls more than it does, it would really stick it as an action classic. But instead it was a technical demonstration, and like that's fine and dandy, and like no one really needs to go rewatch it. But no one's mad that it came out. It's like good that it did, even though, like I said, every sin of the modern era is represented in this movie.
I mean, a year later, you had Sin City that came out, and that did amazingly well. It got high reviews. It did really well financially. I mean, granted, that was made on a much lower budget, and it was made in a very piecemeal fashion against a green screen, and it was shot black and white with a little bit of splashes of color. Granted, that film didn't age very well from a political standpoint. There's a lot of racism and sexism in that film. I don't want to get into it. That's a totally different subject matter. But people can use it to create interesting visual images. And while I don't like 300 as a film, it is visually interesting.
Yeah, and I would say that is the thing that shows where this movie faltered. Sin City, especially, like, because it's directly taking comic book frames from the comic Sin City, there's a lot of very stylized shots all throughout the movie.
The whole movie's stylized,
because the comic was already stylized. In 300, there's stylization going on there, so there's cool stuff you can do with it. And while we might be kind of tired of a lot of it, clearly this is the foundation for a type of movie, and a type of movie that can be good, even though it's really easy for it to be like overly indulgent and not that great or not that interesting.
Right.
So I don't know, like, I walk away from this being like, yeah, this movie could have been a lot tighter and the cast could have like gelled better, but it's not fundamentally broken.
No, it's completely functional. It's just the engine is just kind of gummed up.
Yeah.
Just can't quite get into gear. Just can't quite get there. It's like a sputtering engine. It's like it goes fast, it slows down. It goes fast, it slows down. It can't quite get up to speed.
Yeah. I think earlier I said something to the effect of it's fundamentally broken. And what I meant there was the pacing. Like, I think that the overall package of the movie is fine. It's inoffensive, and you're never going to want to rewatch it.
Yeah.
But it's fine that it exists.
Yeah.
Right.
I also think a big problem in the movie is that by this point, the era of pulp was kind of over. The whole film feels kind of like a pastiche of an era long since gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, try to make a Buck Rogers movie now. Who's going to show up?
This reminded me of The Shadow.
I can see that.
But less interesting. Like, The Shadow at least had a very strong viewpoint in terms of how it was presenting the world. This one felt a bit more surface because it's from a rookie director who wouldn't do anything else. It just feels like a love letter to like those old pulps and those old serials and all of that. And like, that's cool, but it was from someone who hasn't really been tested. And because there wasn't, I think, more control overall in terms of like getting it edited down, then it didn't have the George Lucas problem.
Yeah,
Like
sometimes you need some friends.
Yeah.
exactly. Like the infamous sit down that he had with his film school buddies where they decided okay, well, we're going to completely rewrite the crawl. We're going to re-edit this movie. We're going to rebuild it from scratch. Never happened here.
Yeah. You need somebody to step in and say no.
Right. Like this is a perfectly fine first edit.
Yeah. Your best friends will tell you with honesty, no.
Yeah, this is indulgent here.
Yeah.
It's okay to step in and be like, no, please don't do that. It's like, no, George, we don't need to have all of this explanation of the backstory of this entire universe within the span of about the first 10 minutes.
But what about Big Starklighter?
We don't need it. God, you've read that original crawl, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
It's so bad.
So I wish this movie was shorter, but if you're a film historian, it's worth checking out from that perspective.
Yeah.
Like, what did one of the first truly CG but with human actors, but basically an animated movie look like? And it was one that was this nostalgic fanfic, effectively. Yeah.
It was basically a fanfic. You're so right.
Yeah.
Not bashing fanfic, but it was hey, weren't those cool? And I've written those. I wrote a radio script that is Superman meets the Shadow. It's out there. People have read it. We've talked about adapting it at some point. It exists out there. It's the type of thing that, again, is totally my jam. But this is one that I don't need to rewatch that much. Maybe in another 20 years, I'll rewatch it. But right now, it's just we're good.
I'd show it to your kids maybe one day.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good for kids.
You're into movie making? You want to see what it looked like the first time that we did?
Yeah. I would prefer this over any of the Star Wars prequels. Because at least, this is a better vision than the Star Wars prequels.
I think that's a much more complicated
rabbit
hole to go down.
That's a deep rabbit hole. We don't need to go down it. But I would say at least this one went in with the best of intentions, as opposed to the Star Wars prequels where it felt we're just cashing in. We're trying to make some money.
You see, you're preventing me from just saying yes, automatically. That's the rabbit hole. Stop baiting me with this goddamn rabbit hole.
Hey, Phantom Menace, he was like, we're never going to beat Titanic.
I know.
Dude,
I know.
you just did it for the money. I knew it. But yeah, it's I think there was 2 sets in this film. There was 2 actual practical sets. There was her office.
I think that was just a desk.
I think that's an actual, there was a door and there was a wall and there was a cabinet. There was one set. I think the other one is the airplane when she steps off when they get on the helicarrier. Half of the plane was built, and I think that was about it.
Yeah, they definitely had the cockpit to work with. Jesse, thank you for bringing this. It's good to finally get you on, even though I feel we've had these kind of conversations so much because I've been a guest a bunch of times on Film Rescue.
Yeah.
But where can people find you online? What have you got going on? Who are you?
I'm on Twitter, or X, if you want to call it
X.
Oh,
Twitter.
God, so stupid.
It's fine. Just call it Twitter.
Yeah, just Twitter. Whatever Elon Musk decides to sell it off, it'll go back to being Twitter. I'm over there at Hardcore B Shots. I do have an Instagram as well. It's just my name, Jesse Fresco. My other account got hacked, so I had to make a new one. So it's just my name now. We're over at Jaguar Sharks. We've got 5 separate shows, about to go down to 4. Film Rescue, our flagship show, is coming to an end this season. We're recording this on February 4th, 2024. Film Rescue will be wrapping up in, I believe, the middle of June. We just got to the point where it's 10 seasons of crap. We can't do this anymore. We have been through the depths of hell and back again. We can't do it anymore. And it just got to the point where we were kind of covering the same subjects over and over again. How many more times can we say for the Marvel films, please put in more character development and less CGI? So one more season of that. And then we have Split the Difference, comparing original films and remakes to Whatever's Way Up, where we just shoot the shit about things that are interesting to us. We have a bunch of different movies we're talking about this year. I think Seth wants to talk about The Adventures of Tintin, the Spielberg animated film. I've actually never seen it. Never seen it.
That's another one that is sort of the straddled line in terms of the technology versus the filmmaking side. I should check that one out.
Yeah. I've actually never seen it. I'm interested. And then we also have Mind Brain Movies, where we analyze films from a psychological perspective as film therapy. And also recently we started up a new show called Game Rescue, where it's basically film rescue, except we do it with video games. We just covered Anthem because nobody else is talking about that forgotten piece of crap.
It gets brought up when people talk about BioWare, but that's about it.
Yeah, it was a thing that happened, and then we just move on from the conversation. So, but yeah, that's what we got. Film Rescue is coming to an end. Yeah,
that's sad. We've been kindred spirits for so long, and it's nice that we've been able to interact so much recently with you and Seth, and like for me to be on so much recently. So
well, it also got to the point where if we're trying to become legitimate filmmakers, we can't keep throwing shit across the room. So
fair enough.
We're filmmakers too, assholes. We can't keep doing that.
That is why we try to take this from a more positive standpoint. We generally try not to bash so much as offer constructive criticism, but I do sympathize with that situation.
Yeah, we are still going to have Film Rescue in some capacity. It's just going to go down to a like once a month or once every 2 months situation, and Patreon only. If you want us to watch crap, you got to pay us. So it's like it's reset point. Like, of course, we're going to cover Rebel Moon at some point, but only once both extended editions are released and all of the junk is dumped on Netflix. Okay, now we'll cover it. It's like there's just no point in covering part 1 because it's not a finished movie. So
right.
Yeah.
We'll wait a year once it's all out. Then we'll be like, okay, now we can see how much of a ripoff of Seven Samurai it is.
God, if you want us to cover crap, you have to pay us. Sam, can you imagine if we ever got that Patreon up and running? We certainly would allow patrons to dictate a few of those crappy ones, but generally we try to come from a more positive standpoint. Like today, I feel like we were pretty positive overall, even though
I mean, the movie's fine. It's not the worst. It's a solid C+.
Yeah, solid C+, and very easily could have been a B- with only the most minor of tweaking, and could have been a solid B or B+ with like some heavier editing.
Yeah. And if you're cleaning your house and it's on, like, you don't have to turn it off. Like, it's fine. It's fine in the background.
It's a really good thing to have on at a party and turn the sound off and just have it as like a pretty thing on the TV.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Which again gets back to the Snyder stuff, because like I've often said that if you just had Sucker Punch on, but like only the soundtrack played and nothing else, like it would be a perfectly fine movie.
Oh, that brings up one other positive I had with the movie. The score. I like the score.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the score. That was a good score.
Yeah, it's a good score. Who was the composer on this?
It was rousing.
Edward Schaumner? I have never heard of this person. What else has this person done?
Worked on a decent number of movies.
Oh, wow, a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, look at that. Oh, okay.
Actually,
still working today.
Yeah, pretty good roster. So again, Jesse, thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing this specific movie, because it is one that I have wanted to rewatch.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm thinking like probably in 20 years, I'll want to rewatch it again. But Sam, where can people find and follow you?
Can find me here, of course, every time we post. And occasionally I do check our Discord. But other than that, I don't want you guys to find me. I'm in the world of tomorrow. And if you have any complaints about anything I said about Gwyneth Paltrow's diet habits, I think she's a great actress, but her diet habits, which are terrible, or the fact that Case was really not nice to pilots, you can find Case at.
Well, you can find me on the Goop website, any other place that uses an @ symbol for finding things, at Case Aiken, except for Instagram, where I am holding on to my damn AIM screen name for dear life. And so that there you can find me at Quetzalcoatl5. But otherwise, at Case Aiken on all the @ socials, as I've heard them called sometimes. Or you can find me on the Discord, where you can interact with us, you can interact with the hosts of other great shows, and, you know, you can find sneak peeks for what's coming up next. Sam, what is coming up next on this show?
Next time, we'll be talking about Highlander 2, The Quickening. But until then, if you enjoyed this, pass this on.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe and review the show on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Another Pass is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Sam Elisea and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Jeff Moonen. Our logo and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our intro theme is by Vin Macri, and our outro theme is by Matt Brogan.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.